Either we heal as a team, or we're going to crumble. Inch by inch, play by play, till we're finished. We're in hell right now, gentlemen. Believe me. And we can stay here, get the shit kicked out of us, or we can fight our way back into the light. We can climb out of hell. 1 inch at a time. You know, when you get old in life, things get taken from you. I mean, that's part of life. But you only learn that when you start losing stuff. You find out life's this game of inches. So is football. Because in either game, life or football, the margin for error is so small. I mean, 1/2 a step too late or too early, and you don't quite make it. 1/2 second too slow, too fast, you don't quite catch it. The inches we need are everywhere around us. They're in every break of the game, every minute, every second. On this team, we fight for that inch. On this team, we tear ourselves and everyone else around us to pieces for that inch. We claw our fingernails for that inch. Because we know when we add up all those inches, that's going to make the fucking difference between winning and losing. Between living and dying. I'll tell you this, in any fight, it's the guy who's willing to die who's going to win that inch. And I know if I'm going to have any life anymore, it's because I'm still willing to fight and die for that inch. Because that's what living is. There's 6 inches in front of your face. Now, I can't make you do it. You got to look at the guy next to you. Look into his eyes. Now, I think you're going to see a guy who will go that inch with you. You're going to see a guy who will sacrifice himself for this team because he knows when it comes down to it, you're going to do the same for him. That's a team, gentlemen. And either we heal now as a team, or we will die as individuals.
Ideas are bulletproof.
Welcome to the show, ladies and gentlemen. It is March 18th, 2012. Today is another live edition of Down the Rabbit Hole. I'm your host, Popeye from FederalJack.com, and I want to thank you all for tuning in. Today I have a jam-packed show. I probably will have no extra time. In fact, I'll probably run out of time. There is no shortage of things to talk about. And I'm sure by now you have all heard on earlier shows or on shows on other alternative networks by now that on Friday, President Obama, our resident tyrant, has signed an executive order pretty much declaring peacetime martial law. Now, people shouldn't freak out. It is a big thing, but freaking out never solves anything. Running around like a chicken with your head cut off and being afraid doesn't solve anything, and that's what they want. The establishment wants you to be afraid. It's part of the reason for putting out things like this. It's letting you know that I'm the bully, I'm in charge. You just remember I'm in charge, I'm the federal government. Now, a lot of this was already on the books, as people have pointed out, rightly so. But why this is such a big deal is he's coming out and saying it's not during a time of emergency anymore. It could be during peacetime. Anything. You could piss in the wind, piss the government off, they declare an emergency, and boom. And it's all connected. You hear the continuity of government mentioned in here, the slave labor camps, the, forced working. And when I say forced working conditions, I had this conversation with a couple people yesterday, and somebody told me there's no way they could make people work for free. People would rebel and tell them to go screw, this is America. People wouldn't stand for it. And I laughed at them. And I told them they were delusional and they needed to wake up from the dream that they were in, because they most certainly can force people. Not that it's legal. It's it violates natural law. It violates the Constitution. Yes, it's illegal. It's immoral. But they will do it. Or let me rephrase that. They will try to do it. They can't do it themselves, though. They can't. They need willing idiots to help them. And there are plenty of willing idiots to help force you into a labor camp. They don't care. How do you think Nazi Germany went down? The path that they went down. How do you think they went down that road? How do you think? Because in the 30s, when Hitler took over, people didn't want to piss him off, so they went along to get along. They didn't want to stand up to him because they saw what happened when you stood up to Hitler. His goons came, the bullies came, and took you away. And did Lord knows what to you. So they use fear as a weapon. They grab a few people and scare the shit out of the entire general public, the whole populace. And we'll do this to you if you don't cooperate with us. And everybody, how about if everybody stood up and said, F you? Come take all of us at the same time, right now. Come round all of us up. You loudmouth pussies. You got to hide behind executive orders and stormtroopers with Darth Vader outfits and guns and batons and grenade launchers. That's fear, ladies and gentlemen. They fear you. Every one of you listening to this broadcast live, anybody that hears it in the archives, sees it on YouTube, whatever. They fear you. That's why they do this stuff. You shouldn't fear them. See, they're projecting their fear onto the general populace. That's what this is. This is a physical manifestation of their fear. It's them telling you without telling you that they fear you. That's what this is. Because any man who is not afraid and doesn't have fear doesn't need to have this type of bureaucracy or machine to protect him. If you don't do anything to piss people off, if you don't do things to violate people's rights and make people so angry that they might do something, you wouldn't need all this protection in this huge police state, would you? No, you wouldn't. They fear you, ladies and gentlemen. They fear all of you. Every one of you can make a difference, and every one of you is more powerful on the inside than any one of these elitist douchebags could ever dream to be. And they know that. And they fear you. They despise you for it. And that's why they come up with laws like this and little executive orders. But guess what? You know what the beauty about things like this are? If they violate the Constitution, they're null and void. So they can make all the laws they want. You can put all the stuff on paper you want. The law of the land, the piece of paper that enumerated our rights for all to see for generations to come and was the foundation of this country, says that if any law is created in the future that violates any part of the Constitution, that law is automatically null and void, and therefore unlawful and illegal. Does not count. So they can run around and say, we're going to come get you all. We're going to come get you. They have to, because they're scared shitless of all of you. They fear every one of you. So they have to postulate, or not postulate, they have to, what do you call it? Like kind of like a peacock. That's the word I was looking for. Like a peacock does. And it throws its feathers up and it wants to get noticed. And it's got all the pretty colors on the inside of its feathers, and it runs around showing itself, and it does a little dance. And yeah, that is what they're doing. They're like a big puffer fish. They're swimming around and they're puffing up. I'll get you. I'll sting you. I'll poke you. I'm puffing up. That's what they're doing. They're a pathetic little puffer fish. We are the sharks. And they got all the sharks believing that the pufferfish is the one that's in charge because they puff up and get spiny. Unbelievable. And people are falling for it.
Let us never tolerate outrageous conspiracy.
People are really falling for it.
Concerning the attacks of September the 11th.
What do we do? They declared martial law.
That attempt to shift the blame away from the terrorists themselves.
Let them declare anything they want. You know how you stop it? No. You say no. Start falling in love with the word no. No. No, I will not comply. No, I will not surrender. I will not live on my knees and kiss your asses. That's a good start. All right, we're going to break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back, ladies and gentlemen. Fear, ladies and gentlemen. What is fear? Well, I guess you could say it's an emotion. It's an emotional response to a vibrational frequency. The universe runs on two basic frequencies. You've heard me talk about this before. As you've probably heard other researchers maybe get into this once or twice too. If not, this will be the first time. Strap in. Because here we go. Truth and love are the two basic frequencies that this universe operates on. Now you can talk man-made law and all this other stuff, but the law that absolutely 110% really matters is natural law and universal law. That's where the idea of karma comes from. What goes around comes around. I'm sure everybody's heard it. Universal law. What is universal law? What does it entail? Well, universal law is kind of like a set of rules that everything runs by, whether or not you realize it. That's the way things operate. Kind of like when people say, wow, things tend to even out. Well, of course, because universal law, the arc, it's an arc. So if it starts off shitty, eventually it's going to arc towards something good. That's the way it works. And it's very simplified understanding of it. But I'm trying to break it down into layman's terms for people to understand what I'm talking about, because this whole concept of fear and love as a frequency that the universe operates on, people would, Popeye, what the hell are you talking about? Are you getting all new agey? No, I'm not. It's very simple. Our bodies are like antennae. If you look at the human DNA spiral, it is two antennae. It is a circular antenna for picking up and receiving signals, and it is also a straight antenna up the center for sending out signals. So we send out and receive signals constantly, all the time, from each other, humanity as a whole, and whatever else we're exposed to. That's how they do the mind control aspect on many levels. So this basic frequency, fear and love, if you understand that that's the basics, okay? And that, again, this is oversimplification, but if you understand that on a basic level we all operate on fear and love, you will understand why they do the things they do. You'll understand why they put out, and when I say they, I mean the elite establishment that want to control you, why they, or people that are control freaks, you'll find them doing the same thing. That's usually a microcosm of the much larger problem. And actually, in all actuality, the problem of tyrannical government is not the problem. And I'm going to get into that. But the topic of tyrannical government is not the end-all problem. And that's why we're not going to solve it by just focusing on, oh my God, we have a tyrant in the White House. We need to vote him out and put another politician in. No, that's not going to change the problems. See, it's like having a disease and you're trying to cure one of the symptoms and not the disease itself. You're still going to die from the disease, even if you keep throwing Band-Aids and preventative measures against it, because you're not going after the root of the problem. Okay, but we'll get back into that. Now, fear and love. You cannot live your life based on fear. I know so many people that have lived their lives. Well, what if this happens, or what if this happens, or oh my God, what if oh my God, wait, this could happen or this could happen. I've done it too when I was younger. And I have to tell you, the most empowering thing in the world is to stand up and face one of your fears and say, no, I will not let you control me in this aspect of my life anymore. I will stand up, I will face my fear. And you'd be surprised how powerful that is, how self-empowering it is to stand up and face one's own fears. Standing up and spreading the truth about things is one way of facing your fears. But once you start to research and you understand the truth about things, you'll understand the basis of fear and you'll understand why you shouldn't buy into it. And again, the establishment uses it as a weapon to control you. Because if you're afraid, you're not thinking clearly. Your body literally physically reacts to fear differently than it does to the love vibration. That's why you hear people say all the time, oh, it's all about infinite love. You've heard David Icke, I'm sure, if anybody's ever read any of his books or listened to him, he says, I'm going to paraphrase it here, I'm probably going to mutilate it a little bit, but it's basically infinite love is all there is, everything else is an illusion. And people go, oh, that's so new agey. No. He's trying to empower you to help you not live in that fear frequency. Why do cops beat the crap out of people the way they do? Why do they attack the Occupy Wall Street protesters? There's a little bit more to it than fear. There's also that mentality, which I'll get into, of that, we as a society we are sick, and that's one of the symptoms. It's showing itself. But besides that, they fear. They fear. Why do you think cops walk up to your car when they pull you over with their hand on their gun? And they walk up all suspicious on the car. Yes, I know police officers have been shot before in the line of duty doing routine traffic stops. But does that make every person during the traffic stop a killer? Anybody you pull over? Evil? You have to have your gun ready? Man, you gonna hurt me? Are you gonna hurt me? I was attacked by a 100-pound pit bull, ladies and gentlemen. I don't fear dogs. It tore my left leg up pretty bad when I was younger. I had to cave its head in to get it off me. Do I fear dogs? No. Do I fear pit bulls? No, I do not. It was the owner's fault. I understand the reality of things. I don't allow fear to come get me. I look at things and I understand how they work, and I understand the reality of the situation, and by doing it that way, and by looking at it that way, I can deconstruct it in my brain, and I can pick it apart, and I don't have the fear anymore. There is no fear. None. There's no magic spell you have to cast that makes it go away. You're not going to run around, you could say the litany of the litany against fear, which I'll recite for you next segment. You can recite that if you wanted to. Help you through it. But nothing will make that fear go away for you. You have to do it. You must get rid of your fear. You must get rid of your, I need the government to protect me. I can't do it myself. Oh. People being afraid of guns. Oh, you got to get the guns off the streets. People with guns are bad. Why do you fear the guns or the person with the gun? If you actually understand why the person's carrying the gun and you know the truth about things, do you fear it as much? No. I know many people that were against the Second Amendment that are now for it because they bought into just propaganda that they had no clue whether it was accurate or not, no clue whether it was true. But they hopped on board a trendy train, kind of like the Coney 2012 crap. A lot of people are freaking out. Oh my God, they're using this as pretext to help people to get people to invade Africa. Get behind it. And yeah, they are. But you know what? It also shows how dumb the general public is. It also shows how easily they can be manipulated by watching a viral video with marketing money produced by the Central Intelligence Agency. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to break. We'll be right back. Stay tuned. All right, we're back, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to read you the Litany Against Fear. I've read this before on air, and I will read it again. Whenever you have a tough time, if you're afraid of something, whether it be you're facing one of your fears, or you're nervous because something big is coming up, or whatever the case may be. I mean, a bazillion different references I could give. Yeah, if you feel that anxiety, that fear, that sense of it building up inside you in your chest, recite this to yourself. And I know plenty of people that have emailed me when I've said, I've recited it on air, and I always get emails after every time I do, and it's always from at least one email, and it's always from a new person. It's not the same person, and they always tell me, Popeye, I listened, I went and I looked it up, I recited it myself, I memorized the mantra in my head, and whenever I feel that fear, I recite it, and it helps me through it. So that is the reason I do this, ladies and gentlemen. So hopefully I can help at least one more person. Okay? Here you go. The Litany Against Fear. I must not fear. Fear is the mind killer. Fear is the little death that brings total obliteration. I will face my fear. I will permit it to pass over me and through me. And when it has gone past, I will turn the inner eye to see its path. Where the fear has gone, there will be nothing. Only I will remain. Massively powerful. Massively powerful. And let's get something straight. I want to clarify something. When I tell people, you shouldn't fear, I don't want you to hear this broadcast and then you go through something in your life shortly thereafter and you feel fear and you feel inferior because you feel the fear. Because that's a common mistake people make. That they think to themselves, I must be a loser because I feel this fear, and because, these brave guys, they don't feel fear. That's not true. It's not true at all. Everybody feels it. We're all human. The difference is you learn to master your fear. You learn to control the fear and not to let the fear control you. That's basically what the definition of courage is facing the fear, having that fear, and having the courage, the wherewithal to carry on and push through it. It's not easy, but it can be done. So when you see things like this martial law bill, which is not a good thing by any means. I'm not saying that you shouldn't be worried about it, or that, let me phrase that. I'm not saying you shouldn't be knowledgeable about it and go read what he wrote. It's very large. I mean, he talks about civilian inmate, labor camps, pretty much. Everything is in there. They don't. I'm paraphrasing, of course. They call it. I forget exactly what they call it, but it's under the labor section in the executive order. And most of this stuff has been around since the 50s, and it gets modified every couple years. But the fact that he put this out on a Friday in the afternoon on St. Paddy's Day weekend, end of the news cycle, Saturday no one really picks up the news, and everybody was out partying. Nobody really found out about it till yesterday afternoon. Some people talked about it Friday night, but nobody really talked about it till yesterday. So mission accomplished. They bought themselves some time. Should you be wary about this bill? Yes. Or this executive order? Yes. Is it odd that there's no number on the executive order? Yes. Does it coincide with the creation of the FEMA Corps? Yes. It's directly connected. Do you think it's connected to the 450 million rounds of .40 caliber ammo Department of Homeland Security just purchased? Yes, it's directly connected. But one cannot face this from a fear standpoint. You will have been defeated before you ever step foot on the proverbial battlefield. I urge you to read The Art of War by Sun Tzu. He says in it, all battles, and I'm paraphrasing here again, but all battles are basically won before the combatants ever step foot on the battlefield. Ever. Ever. It's already won in their heads. So if you go into battle, I'm doing air quotes, this info war, as it were, the battle of life, the battle of good versus evil against the New World Order. If you go into this battle afraid and full of fear, you have already lost, my friends. So we must overcome that first. Then we can take care of everything else. Do you think any of those young Marines that have ever been in battle, any of these young soldiers, sailors, airmen, Coast Guardsmen, do you think any of them that have been in battle or under fire or in, life-threatening situations or a harrowing situation, do you think any of them had no fear? No. My good friend Ken Hildebrand, he's listening in the chat. He's a host here on the Orion Talk Radio Network. He's a combat veteran, retired Marine, side gunner on a chopper. You don't get more in the shit than that, besides being a grunt. And he'll tell you, there were times that he was probably scared shitless under fire. He didn't let it control him. He turned it off, and he mastered his fear, and he came home. If he had given in to his fear, who knows what could have happened to him or his fellow Marines? Who knows the consequences? And that's what's happening here on a much larger scale. The citizenry is giving in to fear. Oh my God, oh my God, they're the federal government, they can come get us, Local and state governments all cower like a bunch of little pussies. It's time to get rid of the fear. The biggest problem is people fear this false ego that is the federal government. It's gonna come get me. Well, not if we stand up and take our power back. And it doesn't even have to be violent. They're pushing it to be violent. That's what all these laws are for, because they fear you. They are afraid, and their only reaction is that of an overreaction. In fact, they're not even, the fact that it is a reaction to begin with. They don't sit and think. They just react because they're afraid. They're like rats trapped in the corner, and you're trying to grab it, and it's trying to bite your hand. That's what it's like. That's exactly what the New World Order is like, and the establishment. The emperor has no clothes, and people are starting to see it, and they're scared, so they come out and they lash out with this stuff. And yes, again, it's dangerous stuff, ladies and gentlemen, and it is harrowing times we live in, but one must look at this from an educated, enlightened point of view, and not the point of view of, oh my God, they're going to come get us. Because that's what they want. They want you to be afraid of them. They're the high school bully. The New World Order, the federal government, whatever, the federal government's been hijacked. So, because the government's just a tool. So we'll say the New World Order, for lack of a better term, okay? And it refers to all these, it's just an umbrella term for all these elitist douchebags that are pulling all this stuff. All of them. So, the New World Order, quote unquote, is the school bully. And they're walking around screwing with everybody, picking on people, shoving people, pinching girls' asses, pushing the geeks into the lockers. You know what? When I was in high school, I was an outcast because I didn't fit in with any of those groups. And the one thing I did was kick the shit out of bullies. Okay? So it's time for all of us to stand up and kick the shit out of the high school bully that is the New World Order. No reason to fear the bully, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to break. We'll be right back. We are back, ladies and gentlemen. Final segment of the first hour. Time just flies by. Never seems to fail. Every time I come on air, the show just goes by at about 150 miles an hour. It's amazing. But that's how you know you're having a good show, when you blink and it's the first, it's the first segment of the first hour, and you blink and it's the last segment of the second hour. But we still have hour number 2, so don't go anywhere. Okay. Personal accountability. Personal accountability. Now, you've heard me talk about this before. How does it fall, or how does it relate into what we're talking about? How does it relate to the ever-growing police state and all the problems we have? Well, it relates like this. Part of the problem, part of the reason we have these problems, I should say, is because people don't have any personal accountability. People need to have some sort of big government bureaucracy look out for them and tell them what to do and take care of them, because they can't be responsible on their own to take care of their own stuff. Oh, I need the police to come save me because I don't like guns and I don't like violence and I don't want to hurt anybody. So I need the cops to come rescue me, which they don't. I'm not bashing cops, but let's be honest, the police are not there to really stop crime. They're there to investigate after the fact and clean up the mess. Rarely are cops ever on the scene to stop a crime. Now, I'm not going to say it hasn't happened in the past, because it does, but that's not the norm. And the problem is a lot of people, the police this and the police that, and they're getting barbaric. And again, I will get into that. But the point is, people are so upset. I need protection. I'm afraid the boogeyman is going to get me. I need protection. And that's what they want, ladies and gentlemen. The establishment needs you to be like that, because then you are making a justification for their existence, for this bureaucracy. You're making the justification when you cry and piss and moan that you need police to protect you and to patrol your streets to keep crime down. No, you don't. Form a volunteer organization with the men in the community, and you go out and you patrol. You have a daytime shift and a nighttime shift. You get enough people to volunteer, you can fill up everything. Nobody has to get paid. The only thing you have to pay out is maybe a uniform allowance, like they did when I was a volunteer firefighter. See, if everybody has that energy and that attitude of, I'll chip in and I'll volunteer because, together we can make a better community, you wouldn't need to have armed thugs in Darth Vader outfits rolling around in cars, in squad cars, arresting everybody, and honestly not really maintaining law and order. They're there more just to generate revenue for the city, because the city requires the revenue generation, because they have to pay for all these police and their SWAT teams and everything else, because the government wants you to be afraid of terrorists that are in your closet and are going to come get you, even though you have a better chance of getting hit by a bus than you do of dying of terrorism. You have a better chance of dying of heart disease than you do of terrorism. But they want you to be afraid. Now, yes, there are bad people out there. We've actually helped create many more of them in the past 10 years. Normally when you bomb someone's entire family and you kill mom, dad, 2 sisters and your brother, and the 13-year-old kid's the only one left, yeah, he might be a little angry and he might be talked into strapping a bomb on himself. Oh, but now little Ahmed's a terrorist. Oh, but we didn't take into account that we blew his whole family up and they were innocent and didn't do anything. That's how you create terrorists. And this is all part of personal accountability, because unless we accept the facts as they are, the reality of things, like I just said, we're not going to get anywhere. Oh, we have to get past the Iraq war, we have to do this, we have to fix the world, we have to stop the New World Order. Well, we're not going to. We're not going to. Everybody bitches, Obama, all the conservatives, Obama, he's such a dick, blah, 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 blah. He's taking away our rights. Where were you when Bush was doing the same thing? Huh? Y'all just fell lockstep. And if a conservative got in tomorrow and did all the same things Obama did, none of you would bitch. You would all be like, oh, it's good because it's a conservative. Nobody would do anything. No accountability whatsoever. Everybody projects their hopes and desires onto this one individual. That's the whole point of this whole charade, by the way, with voting and this whole election fraud. You're giving your power away to this one individual who's not going to do anything for you. We need to do it ourselves. Volunteerism, we need to bring it back into our communities. We need to start to take care of things on our own. We wouldn't need half the bureaucracy we have right now if people would just volunteer and not be lazy pieces of crap. You mean people I know that sit on their asses and whine about the government, bitch and moan, but won't lift their goddamn finger to do anything. Won't even help a little old lady walking across the street. But you're going to bitch about big government. Do you see my point, ladies and gentlemen? You can't bitch and moan about big government and the nanny state when you're not willing to do anything to rectify it. What can I do to fight the New World Order, Popeye? I'm just one person. Go out and organize a volunteer, street watch. Who knows? Eventually you guys could turn it. You know how many... Let me explain something really quick. Do you know how many police departments have been... one town, they had volunteer cops because they had laid off the police department. And, yeah, that was that one of the towns that has volunteer cops is the town that one of the guys tased, I think she was a 9-year-old girl or whatever it was, because the kid wouldn't go to school. Might have been a boy, I don't remember. It was a 9-year-old kid, wouldn't go to school. And they suspended the entire police force and everything. The place is so small that they only had like 3 or 4 officers, and they were volunteer officers or part-time officers or something like that. You know what? Get rid of the paid incentive for it. Get rid of it. Popeye, you're crazy. Why should people give their time and their energy and their effort for free? Well, that's the problem with this country. Everybody wants to get paid for everything. Everybody. Let me share a little secret. Do any of you think I get paid for doing this radio show? Do you? I know some of you do. No, I don't. I don't have any sponsors. Not one. I don't get a paycheck from Jimmy X. I supply the 2 hours of content, and he gives me the platform. That's the way it works. Like a barter system. No money exchanged. He doesn't pay me to be on air. I don't pay him to be on air. You think I make any money off federaljack.com? All the years, thousands of hours I've put into video editing and graphics and posting articles. Do you think I've made any money off that? At all? Well, you have a chip-in thing on the side, Popeye. Yeah. That's to kind of help defray some of the costs because I pay for everything out of my pocket. I pay a couple $100 a month out of my pocket. Not to mention the money that my IT guy chips in to help with things too. And we have one other contributor, a friend of mine. You all know him. You've seen him in videos and stuff with me before. My buddy Brent. You know, we pay for everything out of our pockets. Everything. The DVDs we give away, everything. Everything we pay for. Now, am I asking for a pat in the back? No. Why am I bringing this up? Because I'm trying to use it as an example that if I can do it, there's no reason that you out there can't. There's no reason that you all can't do this. I don't want to hear, oh, well, this, that, the other thing. Get together, get a group of people, and figure something out. Do something. Step up to the plate. Everybody can volunteer their time. I volunteer my time doing this radio show in Federal Jack to educate people so that we can get our country back. I don't do it. I certainly don't do it for ego, ladies and gentlemen. Think about it. I don't use my real name on air, do I? No, because it's not about me. It's not about me at all. It's about the message and the information. So I try to lead by example, as it were. Some people don't like the way I do things. I really don't care. That's your problem. I don't care. Okay? That's how I am. But I try to lead by example. I try to... the way I was raised was I can't ask anybody to do anything that I wouldn't be willing to do myself. It's something I learned when I was a firefighter, something I learned when I was in the military as well. If you have people under your command, you can't expect them to do, and I'm not saying that you are all under my command. I'm just using this as an example from the fire department in the military. You can't expect people, if I have a command of 5, I'm in charge of 5 people, I can't expect any of those 5 people to do anything that I wouldn't be willing to do myself. So when I come on this program and I volunteer my time and I ask you guys to do the same, it's coming from a place of I do it myself. So I'm not, do as I say, not as I do. I'm trying to lead by example. Hopefully, you guys will pick up the lead and run with it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to break. When I come back, hour number 2, I'm going to be playing some audio from an interview, a podcast I did with Mark Passio recently on this very subject about the society and how sick we are as a society. We'll be right back. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back with hour number 2 here on today's Sunday edition of Down the Rabbit Hole. I am your host, Popeye, from FederalJack.com. And before I forget, I want to remind you all to make sure you stay tuned to Orion after my show so you can hear my buddy Joe Joseph and my other buddy Tim Watts. Let me tell you something. Tim is a soldier, ladies and gentlemen. That man was in the hospital not too many days ago, and the day he came out, within like 2 hours, he was on the air doing his show with Joe. You want to talk about dedication? I mean, Tim was in no way in the hospital for something minor either, okay? And he came home. The only thing he wanted to do was get out and come home and be able to get on air that night and get the information out to the people. That's dedication. That's the kind of volunteerism I was talking about. That's the kind of dedication that I'm talking about that's going to take back this country. So everybody should take a note from him. So thank you, Tim. From me to you personally, I want to thank you, buddy, because, it's testicular fortitude. You're a good man. So make sure you tune in to the Freedom Link Radio with Tim and Joe Joseph. Always a good program. And on Sundays, it's usually, what do they call it? Conspiracy Chronicles, I think it's called. So they always delve into the realm of conspiracy on Sunday, so check it out. All right. I interviewed Mark Passio a couple weeks ago for a special podcast, and I recently aired it on the Intel Hub. You all know many of you know, I have my own site, FederalJack.com, but because we have to work together to beat this, I've teamed up with a few different people, as you know, over the course of time, one group being the IntelHub.com. Excellent website, by the way, just filled with a ton of information. I pull articles from them myself, and I constantly chat with Alex about, hey, did you see this, or did you check this out? Alex Thomas, by the way, being one of the founders, the other one being Shepard Ambellis. Anyway, I do a podcast for them as well as Joe, and recently I released through that platform my podcast, a special interview I had done with Mark Passio. And this was after the last time I had him on the show about 2.5 weeks ago. We had this special podcast a few days later, and it was Mark like not many people have heard him. And he got really angry and pissed off about what's going on. And he approached me and he was like, Popeye, can we do something? Because I'm mad. And what sparked it, what the straw that broke the camel's back was when Mark saw the video of that girl being tasered by the fat Florida state trooper, and she did a half gainer in her face, and that was it. And she's brain dead. Now I think she's actually physically dead. I think they took her off life support. I could be wrong. She might still be on life support, but I had heard that they had taken her off. Not really sure. Anyway, it was like the straw that broke the camel's back. So Mark contacted me, and he wanted to get into how basically the society is sick, and we went over a few things. So I'm going to play part of the podcast for you, ladies and gentlemen. I want you to hear the audio of what Mark had to say, because this is Mark Passio, I promise, like you've never heard him. He doesn't talk like this on his show. He was just fired up and pissed, and rightfully so. We should all be fired up and pissed. So let me cue up the the audio here, and I'm going to play it for you. Check it out. Good friend of mine, researcher and fellow radio show host, Mark Passio. And normally you've heard us talk about the numerology aspect of things, the dark occult, connections with 9/11. We've done mind control. Mark and I have done a lot of shows, Satanism, all this stuff. Tonight it's a little different. I mean, it's connected to that, but it dovetails with that. But tonight it's Mark, probably as you've never heard him before, and he's going to pose some questions to you and to the people out there that work for the New World Order, and he's going to get you to think. So, without wasting any more time, I'm going to give the floor to Mark. Mark, it's all yours.
Popeye, thanks so much for having me on this special edition podcast. And what I wanted to come on just to briefly do is a kind of an experiment, I guess you could say. This is a question that I want to raise, and it's an issue that's kind of been weighing heavily upon my mind because of certain things that I've been seeing in the media in general. And a video was brought to my attention about a week ago of a police officer who killed a young woman with a taser. Okay, he tased her while she was running. Okay, tased her in the back, and she fell to the ground, going limp from the taser strike, and struck her head violently. Struck her head on the concrete, on the pavement, and was brain dead. Okay, at the scene, you could just see the video is horrific to watch. You could see the life just go right out of her. You know that this girl basically instantly died. Okay, brain death is death for all intents and purposes. You don't come back once the brain is basically electrically dead. A machine is breathing for this girl if she's even still alive, and obviously it'll only be a matter of time before her family, makes the realization that, they can't keep her connected to a machine to breathe for her. So she has died for all intents and purposes, whether she is physically still being, kept alive by a machine or not. Unfortunately, that's the case. So this sickening piece of video just made me go back to this kind of experiment, like I was alluding to, that I have done with personal friends of mine, with associates that I have, gathered with, just to see what the dynamic would be like if you put this idea out to them. And I'm going to explain what it is. And it's an interesting social experiment to do, and it's a very interesting thing to do just to see where your friends' views may happen to lie when it comes to an issue like this, which I'm going to bring up. And it also may be very interesting just to engage in this idea just to see what you think of it. And what the concept or the topic is moral culpability. Okay, that's the general concept that I want to bring up. And this is intricately connected to natural law, a topic which I have talked about extensively on my radio programs, and something that I consider to be the utmost solution in creating any positive or lasting change in our reality is a deep understanding of natural law, its principles, and how it actually works to manifest the experiences that we then must live with, must deal with in our reality. So I've called natural law and its workings, it's the understanding of it, the real law of attraction, to understand what we are attracting to ourselves as individuals and as a society. Okay, understanding the principles of natural law helps us to gain a full understanding of how we are creating our reality through our thoughts, our emotions, and above all, by our actions. So when we understand that natural law is all about the difference between right and wrong, the true objective difference between right and wrong, which we can know, that is not a relative notion, that there is such a thing as the objective moral difference between right and wrong, actions which are right, which we do have a right to take, actions which we do not have a right to take, okay? And an instance like this scenario that happened down in Florida, where this girl did not harm another living being. Her only, quote, offense was that she attempted to flee from a policeman. Okay? She did not want, to be taken into his custody when she knew that she had not hurt someone else. She obviously got scared, fight or flight mode kicked in. She chose to take flight. Now, the first thing is people who will respond with, she got what she deserved because she ran from a cop. And I've actually seen this comment posted with the video, and it turns my stomach.
I'm going to pause it right there, and I will pick it up, ladies and gentlemen, right there on the other side of the break. So stay tuned, 3 minutes more with my special podcast with Mark Passio about moral culpability. It's all directly related to personal accountability. We'll be right back.
It actually makes me want to vomit. That anybody could be that cold and callous that you think someone deserves to be murdered because they ran from someone that you believe, in your short-sightedness, in your mind control, has authority over this individual, and they have some moral obligation to completely obey the commands of this individual who has no more or less rights than she does. And this individual has now been responsible for extinguishing the life of a young girl. And my heart goes out to the family of this individual, and I hope they try to take whatever measures they can to right this situation and to make sure that this individual who murdered their daughter pays for that by whatever means they need to do it by. Okay? So beyond that point, I want to talk about moral culpability. How much is this person responsible? Okay? And what is the difference between a person who obeys an order and, carries out an action that they have been told that they are allowed to carry out? What is, the difference between their moral responsibility to that instance, to that situation, their culpability, versus someone who told them that it was okay to do that? So an example that you can liken this to is, let's look at the Third Reich in Germany in the 1930s and 40s. You had the high-ranking members of the Nazi Party, the Nazi regime, who were telling their subordinates that, well, this is how we're seeing the world. This is our view of these other individuals, okay, that we don't consider on the same par as us as human beings. We consider them somehow substandard or subhuman. And we're telling you it is okay for you to do this. As a matter of fact, we're making it a law that you can't intermarry in certain ways with other people of what we consider impure blood, etc. The so-called race laws. And we're going to say that these people are going to be subjected to certain treatments, and it is okay for you to do that to those individuals. You've been told that that's okay. So these people who are manipulating the ways people see reality and see each other, okay, are telling other people and manipulating their consciousness and saying, you can do this. It's right for you to do this. You should do this. As a matter of fact, it's the law for you to do this. Let's take a look at their moral culpability versus the person who says, okay, I accept that. I accept your claim of authority. I accept that that's the law. I accept that I have the right to do that. And now I'm going to go out and actually take that action, and I'm going to do it. So in other words, the question could become, who has more moral culpability? High-ranking members of the Nazi Party who gave the orders to exterminate members of a race of people, or the people who actually carried out those orders? Who has more moral culpability? The police department that says this person acted within the accords of their law and their system of law and regulation, or the person who actually took the action, tasered another individual in the back who had harmed no other individual, just because they gave them a command to stop and they didn't comply with that command. See, this is the beginning, ladies and gentlemen, of being shot for not showing your papers, and not with a taser, with a real gun loaded with real bullets. That's what this is the beginning of. And if you are so naive to think that that's not the beginning of this, you're lost. And I don't know what to tell you, because people are being murdered openly now, right before people's eyes, and other people are standing back and doing nothing. And moreover, what's even more sickening is there are people who are agreeing with this kind of behavior, thinking that it's okay, thinking that in some way it's moral, and that this individual had some sort of such a moral obligation to obey the commands of this dictator.
Well, you know what, Chris, Mark, they always say, she was on cocaine, or she was, high, or
right.
She shouldn't have run from the police. And she
herself or others. That's another phrase that is always used.
And it's, by the way, the fact that they tasered her for fleeing is not in the Florida rules here for the state police. They're not allowed to taser somebody just for fleeing. Yeah, in this case, this high-profile case where this individual, is affected in this, at this level, her whole family, everybody, they say, well, it was justified because she was running towards the highway and she could have jumped onto the highway and been a danger to herself. So they tased her.
Right, and killed her as a result.
Right.
So that was much safer than allowing her to just, leave the scene, which there was no scene because there was no violence. The only violence that was done was by this cop. That's the only violence that was done. And now a girl is dead as a result of her not having obeyed a command. Because this, let's call him what he really is. This is not really even an actual human. This is an animal. This is a being with animal consciousness. That's what it is. He is in such fight or flight modality and consciousness that he is not operating from the human brain. Okay? This is a person with a damaged neocortical brain, provably. Okay? And he probably lives in and exists in that chronic condition of brain imbalance constantly. And a brain scan would show this. I have absolutely zero doubt. Okay? You did a brain scan of this individual. Again, it would look like craters on the moon. All right? It would look like Swiss cheese. That's what his brain neocortex would look like. It would be so electrically deadened in certain areas because he's always in a state of left-brained, chronic left-brain hemispherical imbalance, and he's operating out of the R complex of the brain all the time. Understand the parts of the brain, understand basic brain chemistry and how the complexes of the brain function to grasp this understanding. Okay? This person cannot possibly doing an action like this cannot possibly be in a state of good mental health or brain health. And as such, he should not even be anywhere near any kind of a position of responsibility because he has none. He doesn't have the capability of exercising responsibility. And I would tell that to his face or to the face of any of his family members. Okay? I'm tired of joking around about stuff like this because again, people are just dying now as a result. And this is the beginning, like I said, of show me your papers or I'm going to put a bullet in your head. That's the beginning of this. Until we need to nip this in the bud. Okay? And you don't have any kind of a moral responsibility to obey every single command that is issued to you by people in so-called authority. This is nonsense. You have the moral responsibility to do what is right. And that doesn't mean obeying authority. That means knowing what natural law is. That means knowing what your rights are and what they are not and operating in those capacities. And that's it. You don't have to obey the commands of someone else just because they're wearing a costume. They have no more or less rights than you. This person did not have the right to do this to this individual at all. I don't care what he suspected her of doing. Okay? She didn't murder anybody. All right?
I'll stop it there, and I'll pick it up again right where I left off on the other side of the break. Stay tuned. I'll be right back. Moral culpability, personal accountability, myself and Mark Pascal. Don't go anywhere.
Nobody was harmed as a result of what she did. He just wanted her to stop and was flustered by the fact that she didn't consider him the utmost authority that she had to obey. And therefore, he was going to make her stop, because to them, there is no compromise. It's always my way. I always win. You always will obey. That's what they've been taught. That's how they're trained, literally. Okay? And the whole point here is this is going to get worse and worse and worse, and more people's children are going to die as a result of this kind of sick, imbalanced behavior. That unless we look at this and ask ourselves some basic questions of who really bears the brunt of this responsibility, and then take some action based on this, this is going to get worse and worse. So the first question people need to ask themselves is, who bears the brunt of the responsibility, the order giver or the order follower? That's the main question of the experiment. That's the main thing. You ask that question in a social setting. Who bears more moral responsibility, Adolf Hitler or the SS guard that actually released the gas into one of the gas chambers? And I would tell you, I would, in that instance, I would trade places with Hitler before I trade places with that SS guard who released that gas. In a heartbeat, in a second. Okay? As far as I'm concerned, the entire brunt of the responsibility and the moral culpability always lies with the person who actually took the action, not the person who commanded the action. Yes, do they bear some of the brunt of the responsibility? Yes, but it is considerably less karmically. And yes, there is such a thing as karmic consequence. It does exist. It does exist. Natural law will always seek a balance, regardless of whether that is going to happen in your physical reality in this lifetime or elsewhere. You're going to be held to account, because that's what this entire natural law system is in the universe. It's an accounting system. It's a big monetary system, only it operates in the true perspective of money, the real money, the one eye. The cosmic divine intelligence that underlies all of creation, that ultimately does hold everything that happens in this reality to account, because it is seeking to bring balance. These are all financial terms. I actually talked about this kind of green language on my show earlier tonight, on podcast number 97. So this is an accounting system, is what natural law actually is. And it's tallying a balance. That's what it's doing. It's striving for balance. So if you do something that you had no natural law right to do, you violate natural law, it's a transgression against someone else's inherent rights. They weren't harming someone, but you went and harmed them because you thought somehow you had the right to do that, when in fact no such right existed. You are going to be held to account for that under natural law. The universe will eventually hold you to account for that transgression against natural law. Whether you believe in it, whether you think it's going to happen or not, it is going to happen. And the people who want to think that that isn't the reality of our situation are delusional. Delusional.
Well, here, let's extrapolate it to a real-world scenario that they can look at and use as an example. The high rate of suicide in our military. Why do you think these men and women come back and they kill themselves? Do you think it's because they're all drug addicts? The guys that are doing it are just crazy. No, it's because they realize what has happened. Some of them were forced to partake in things, and when I say forced, people have heard the shows I've done where people's commands, when they objected to things, these horrible things that they were doing, they themselves were locked up and tortured by their very command. So it's it's amazing how people can go down that that hole that fast and become they lose their humanity. It's like I've said this on my show before, Mark. When you open up that can of worms, when you release that evil, it's not just, well, we can use it as a weapon against this or that, or, you know what I mean? It permeates everything. You can't touch it without it getting through whatever quote-unquote protective barrier you try to put up. It'll get into your soul, and it takes over your very humanity. And that's a lot of these, that's in it. Of course, that's not why every, person commits suicide, but a lot of people are committing suicide because they realized what happened to them. And they're so ashamed of themselves, or they don't know how to deal with it. And, of course, they're shunned because they're not taken care of. So, nobody cares about them either. That's just how evil this system is. They don't care. In fact, you yourself know at what level, Mark, the not caring goes to, I should say. They have their own, the elites, I should say, the elites have their own view on the military and police, and they actually view them as dogs. So, and just pawns and tools. And actually, I'll let Mark get into that a little bit. But it goes to show you that they don't care about anybody, and they're going to use you to do the stuff that they need done. And when it's all said and done, the people that did it are going to be the ones that end up paying. Via karma and via their soul and the damage it does to them. And you can see that it's evident. And that really disgusts me, because these people, Mark, these elitist pricks that start these wars and do these things, they know this.
Sure.
It's almost like they're sacrificing those people's souls as well, and they just don't care.
The dark occultists that I worked with who call military and police their dogs or their pets, okay? Literally, that is what they call them. They know full well that the brunt of the karmic debt that is going to be accrued, again, other financial terms, okay, because this isn't the fake monetary system, it's the real one, okay, what we're all being held to account for under natural law, the actions that we take or do not take here, okay? They know full well that that the accrual of karmic debt is going to be so much greater but from the person who actually takes the action that they command, that they issue the command for. Okay, that's why they're insulating themselves, these occultists, from the brunt of that responsibility. And they're shifting that karmic debt onto someone else. In other words, they're leaving them holding the bag, so to speak. Okay? And it's exactly what you said. These people ultimately, finally, at some future point, when they break enough, when they're broken down so much by what they have actually seen and done, they're under so much trauma that puts them into this further state of stress, okay? And ultimately, they have nowhere to flee except to take themselves out of the picture. And that is why the suicide rate is so high, because these people have done things that are so horrific to the soul. And make no mistake, that's what this is about. This is about owning the soul. And these people's souls are taken. That cop, his soul is in such a deteriorated, devastated condition. And I'm not even saying everybody should just hate people like that. I'm saying we need, as a society, to start stepping up and understanding the kind of devastation that has been done to people in this condition who would do an action like that, and start working to try to get them out of that condition by however we have to do it. Okay? The problem is that these people are like a secret society. They're walled off. They're like firewalled from the rest of the community. They only hang out with their own, their quote-unquote own kind. They only hang out with their like-minded individuals who are on the force, okay, or in their regime, I guess you could say, their people who are in their squad or in their regiment, whatever. Okay, in the case of the military, They hang out with people who are like them, who are doing the same thing, who are in the same situations, and they're insulated and isolated from people who are trying to put out a message like this to help them to understand, one, you're ill.
All right, ladies and gentlemen. Final segment coming up. Don't go anywhere. You don't want to miss the rest of this interview with Mark Passio. You won't be able to hear the whole thing here. I'll tell you where you can hear it when we come back. Stay tuned.
On awry, even in their thinking regarding wanting to do good, is that ultimately you can't do long-term good by using force, by using violence. It's not possible. You cannot do that. The only long-term good that you can do is understanding natural law and helping people to come into a state of balance by helping them to change their fundamental worldview. First of all, cops don't even stop harm from being done preemptively. Nope. It's not possible to do that. Nope. They can only show up basically after the harm's been done.
That's why you should always carry your own gun.
Anyone. Right.
I mean, I'm not trying to be an advocate of, hurting anybody, but if you have to protect yourself, you got to do what you got to do.
You have the right to use force to defend yourself. If you're being attacked and the person has no right to do what they're doing to you, you have a right to respond with the necessary amount of force to put down that unlawful attack, period. And I mean unlawful in the sense of natural law. The person has no right to take that action. You can put that down however you need to do it. Okay, that's called defending yourself with force. Force we have a right to use. Violence we don't have a right to use. That's the undue initiation of force, which you had no right to initiate. But there are situations when you do have a right to use force as a response, not as an initiation. That makes it violence. Okay? So he initiated violence when he tased this girl. And what kind of a big stretch or jump is it to say you tased an unarmed girl, which resulted in her death? You don't think that an individual like that would follow an order to shoot somebody in the head if they refuse to give their papers? If you think that's some kind of a big unnatural stretch, you're an extremely naive and stupid person. There is no big stretch there. If they're already in a state of consciousness where they're willing to take out an electrical weapon, tase somebody on the run, and put their head up down against the concrete, whether he intended for that to happen or not, you're fully aware somebody's running and you tase them and their electrical system basically is made inoperable, and they're already on the move and they're running over concrete, and you know how easy it is for somebody's skull to be cracked, okay? They're aware of that more than anything because I'm sure they see their share of accidents, okay? You know that that's a full well possibility that could have happened. And it did, and the girl is dead as a result. And anybody that thinks that's not a big stretch to from taking an action like that to saying, show me your papers or you're getting a bullet. Again, you're an emotional, intellectual, and psychological infant.
I agree, because they're not paying attention. They're not paying attention to what's going on.
So what I'm asking people to do as a social experiment here is with your friends, with your family members, okay, with people that you know, hang out with, care about, etc. Just put this idea out there as part of a conversation. Ask them what they think regarding who bears the brunt of the responsibility in a situation where an order is given that causes extreme harm to another human being, or the person who follows the order. Okay? That's what I'm asking people to do. And see what the dynamic is like. First of all, you have to answer that for yourself. Okay? You know where I stand on that. All right? But find out where you stand on it. And then ask other people and see what the result is. Because what I did when I did this several times in several situations is it always seems to spark lively, if not heated, debates between people who stand firmly on one side of this or the other. The people who believe that the mastermind, in other words, has the responsibility, like, in other words, the mob boss who calls a hit on an individual, and then other people are polarized the other way, that the hitman who actually carries out the hit bears the brunt of the responsibility and the karmic consequence, the karmic debt. So I would just ask people to do that as a general social experiment. Put that idea out there, okay? Who bears more moral culpability? The person who is issuing the order or the person who is following the order and as a result causing immense harm to another living human being? So that's really what I came on to ask Popeye for a platform to just put this idea out there. It's something that I've mentioned on my show in the past, and it's something that I will be talking about on future shows a lot. And this, again, is tied in intricately with natural law, and people can take a look at the podcast that I did on natural law. I believe it began in the mid-'70s someplace, maybe podcast number 73, I think I started with that topic. So definitely check that out on my website on whatonearthishappening.com. Go to the free podcast section on the site, and you can download those podcasts. If you do a search on the page for natural law, that would be an easy way of finding which podcasts I covered that topic in. But again, as a topic, they were generally covered from the mid-'70s onward, or maybe, like I said, 73, early 70s onward. And I did about 9 or 10 podcasts on that topic. So that's what I wanted to come on to talk about, and do that as an interesting social experiment, and really start to understand that the transgressions against our inherent natural law rights are really ramping up and getting completely out of control, and it's time to really start bringing this issue to the forefront by talking about it openly and making it known that we're not going to stand for this. So, Popeye, I want to thank you for bringing me on to do this special podcast, and I hope people will give this matter the attention that it deserves. So thank you.
There you go, ladies and gentlemen. And you can hear, I had to fast forward it a bit. I cut out about 20 minutes of it so you guys could hear the end where Mark got into his social experiment idea, which is what I wanted you guys to hear. So to hear the thing in its entirety right now, it's not up on YouTube yet. It will be over at the Intel Hubs channel eventually. Not for sale to NWO. But you can go over to the Intel Hubs channel. They have their website, rather, the intelhub.com, and they have the you'll see a banner for the podcast, and just click on it, and then it'll bring you to the page, and you can. It should be, I think, the last one that was done, so you can go check it out. It's the podcast with Mark Passio. Incredible podcast, and it dovetails with exactly what I was talking about tonight. That's why I wanted you guys to hear it. It's very important that people understand that we have to take responsibility for our own actions. That's the biggest step in getting through all of this. Because you won't have this big brother, big bad government looking over your shoulder, the fear, if you don't even require them to be there. If we evolve to the point where we don't require them, they're nothing to fear. They're obsolete. And that's what's happening, ladies and gentlemen. We are evolving, and they fear that evolution because they understand that we are about to realize our own true power. But society right now is on this precipice, and many people are sick. And I'm not saying, oh, you're mentally deranged. When I say sick, I mean sick like Mark and I were talking about in the podcast, where you think it's okay for a girl to get tasered and have her head smashed into the ground because she ran from the cops. Well, she shouldn't have run. Dumb girl shouldn't have run. Shouldn't have been on drugs. There wouldn't have been a problem. No, that's not the truth. And that's not accurate at all either. When it comes to the Iraq War, we have to accept responsibility for what we've done. That's a way we can get through that, and helping the men and women who've come back damaged heal. That's how we'll help them. We have to help them. We have to understand what we were cheerleaders for actually damaged their souls, like Mark and I talked about. We have to accept responsibility. We have to face facts Stop trying to stick our head in the sand because reality is too ugly and we don't want to deal with it. We need to grow up. Everybody says, Popeye, how will we defeat the New World Order? Exactly how I just told you. You will stop buying into their fear, and we will accept personal responsibility for things, and we will step up to the plate and do the right thing. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how we will win. I don't have to sit here and give you some 20-minute diatribe how to do it. It's as simple as that. Everybody has to accept the responsibility of what we've allowed to happen. The older generations, the baby boomers that don't want to admit this, many of them are waking up, but the ones that say, oh, no, I don't want to believe it, even when it's right in their face, because then that would mean that they bore responsibility for it getting this far. Just accept it and move on. We won't hold it against you. We're all on the same team. We are all humanity. We are all evolving. These elitist controlling pricks want to stop that. They fear us, they fear you, they fear me, and they project their fear onto us. Time to stand up and say no. Put your hands up, ladies and gentlemen, and say no. It's time to stand up and stop being afraid. And you will realize your true power. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, it is an honor. I will see you on Wednesday at 10 o'clock. Stay tuned for my buddy Joe Joseph and my other buddy Tim Watts. I'm out.